So I'll talk through the 6 processes. So I'll talk it through in the way we talk about it in the study, in the psychedelic dive. So the first layer is diffusion. And so for that process, if you imagine a sea, and if you imagine waves, a wavy sea, and that's life. Life with all of the stimulation and all the challenges and all the things we have to do, the busyness, and the waves hit. And so often we feel that we're just like swimming against the tide of the waves, and we're caught in that. And what we do in order to get through that life is we have this internal guidance system, the cognitive ego systems, protective safety system, which tells us, do this, you didn't do that right, do that better, why are you such an idiot, God, blah, blah, blah. All of that stuff that we all have, essentially. I've never met anyone that doesn't have any of it. Well, maybe some very experienced meditators and Buddhist monks, but people that haven't worked with it have got it. It's like the monkey mind. And so diffusing is bringing some awareness to, oh my God, my mind has gone into that bringing awareness, like you say, it's the awareness of it, and choosing to defuse from it. So rather than being your thoughts, rather than being lost in that wave of, I'm shit, I'm rubbish, I'm never going to be better, why do I always get everything wrong, nobody likes me, I need to do that, oh, I forgot this. Rather than being caught in that, it's stepping out, looking at that, and choosing to dive beneath the surface of those waves and dive into the body and the senses. So that's step 1, diffusion.
Okay.
So we ask people to imagine that they've been on a boat, and that boats drop them in the middle of the sea, and that they go down and they're in those waves. And this is like at the beginning of the psychedelic session, they decide to take those capsules. They choose to take those capsules, it's their choice. And when they take them, they're diving down below that surface of the mind, because psychedelics essentially dissolve those ego structures. They dissolve the default mode network for a while. So that chatter just disappears. So most of the time it can happen different ways for different people, but essentially it's deactivating that ego mind. You dive down into the body. So the second process, so one is diffuse, diving down from those waves of mental chatter. The second process is present moment focus and being in your senses. So this one is sense. And that is about bringing awareness to your body, your breath, how your heart feels, how your stomach feels. So to do that one, we ask people to this is all in the preparation day, this visualization exercise. So we say, imagine that you're diving down through the water. And as you dive down, imagine that you're diving down from your fingers to your toes, you do a body scan. So as you dive down through that water, you bring your awareness to your tips of your fingers and all the way down through your arms and your head and your heart, and you bring your awareness down through your whole body. You do it a couple of times, and they imagine they're diving down, and that helps people tune into their body and really helps with this process of disengaging from that mental chatter and going into their felt sense. Because this is where we carry our emotions. This is where we carry how we really are feeling. When we're so stuck in our heads, we don't know how we're feeling because we're just in our defense. And we're not in our real tenderness and our real physical, fleshy reality of how it feels to be us. So that helps them connect to their emotion and their bodies. And then we ask them to dive down to the bottom of the sea. And this is the third process. And this one is called acceptance. And this is about going towards the difficult feelings. So when they've got more in tune with their body, they've done the body scan, we ask them almost to visualize that they're down at the bottom of the seabed and there are some beautiful corals and some lovely things that they could look at. But there's also these piles of big, dark oyster shells. And those are the traumas. Those are the things that have happened to us in our lives. Those are the things that feel our shame, the painful things, the things about ourselves we don't like, the things that we want to avoid, the ugly parts of ourselves, the shadow parts of ourselves. And you see that pile of oysters, and instead of swimming away from it, you swim right towards it and you take up an oyster and you open it up. And in opening up that shell, you're accepting it and you're opening up and you're wanting to learn from it. And the shell is like this. The shell is like the outer layer. It's like the anger and the don't go here, the tough stuff. And then inside there's all the vulnerability and the shame and the kind of abandonments and the fear and feeling small and feeling like a child. all these layers of kind of gunky, slimy, like in an oyster, underneath that spiky layer, there's all this kind of gunky, slimy stuff. And then you just ask people to be with it, stay with it, like you said, be with what's there. Open yourself up, let the feelings wash over you, be with that difficult stuff. And then when you search through that pain and that vulnerability, if you've allowed yourself to really open up to it, that's when you find the pearl. Because the pearl in the oyster is, so the way a pearl forms in an oyster is that a bit of grit gets into the shell, like an irritant. And over time, it gently covers it with mother of pearl, that shiny stuff. So rather than getting rid of it, the oyster accepts it in, and very slowly over time, it coats with this mother of pearl. So it turns what was annoying, gritty irritation, trauma, into something beautiful and precious. And I think that's what happens, isn't it? Because when those things happen to us, we do learn so much. And we learn about what we need, what we didn't have and what we need, and it gives us meaning. So we ask people to imagine that they're searching through these oysters and that they're looking for pearls. And then when they find a pearl, which is essentially the lesson in their pain, when they've really sat with it, what is that pain showing them? And they always can do it. This is the visualization of the day before the psychedelic journey. And I was amazed by how much people go into it. They dive down, they find those oysters, and they find the pearls, and they will say, this is my learning. And often we ask them to think about how they're feeling right now. So it's the day before their psychedelic session. They'll often feel a lot of anxiety. I'm not good enough. I'm not going to be able to do it right. I'm so hopeless. What if it doesn't work for me? And they look for the pearl, the lesson, and that's their intention for the next day. And so then so that's the first three processes, and that's the kind of acceptance part of psychological flexibility. It's diving down from your mind into your body and feeling your feelings in your body and really opening up to pain. And then the next half of it, when they've got that pearl, they swim up to the surface and they burst up through the surface, and then they see this big sun and the big surface of the water, and it's all calm. And we ask people just imagine that feeling of expansive sky, and they connect to an idea of an observer self. And that observer self is like being the sky, not the weather. This is an idea from acceptance and commitment therapy. Sometimes in life, storms will happen, lightning, rain, rainbows, sunshine. Life is constant weather changing patterns. And we can feel like we're caught up in that storm and that the storm's going to break the sky, or we can realize that we are the sky and that we hold all those different things and it will never break us, that no amount of lightning can ever burn the sky. So people get that feeling of, I've been on this dive and I've felt this pain, and here I am, I'm the sky and I'm the sea, I'm all of this observer self that is unchanging. In a way, it's a spiritual concept as well, although it doesn't have to be. But it's the part of the self that's developed in meditation, the bigger self, the unchanging self. And it could be your soul, I guess, in a way. And then they're then asked, the next stage of it is they look in their hand, they look at the pearl, and they remember the lesson that the pearls told them. And that's all about connecting to their values and connecting to meaning. So that's the next stage. So there's the first three all about acceptance, then they come up to the surface, and step 4 is about observer self. Step 5 is connecting to meaning and values. And then the final step is, okay, what am I going to do with it? And that is about connecting to an intention or connecting to actions. How am I going to put into action what I've learned? So that's psychological flexibility, being able to go into feelings, accept them, realize what the message is, what the teaching is, what the meaning is, and then doing something about it.